Hello everyone, welcome. This is Calvin Wazoo, Richard here bringing you another video. And as the title of this video implies, it's about car seat headrests release, How to Leave Town and its Implicit Buddhism. Now this is going to be a long video. I'm going to take a very deep dive into the lyrics from two of the songs on this release, which was called an EP. I don't get that. It's an EP in digital form, I guess, but when you compare it to other car seat headrest releases, I mean, there's 61 minutes, more than 61 minutes of music on this. But anyway, I don't have a cover to show for this. The two selections that I'm going to take a particularly deep dive into are the opener, ending of Dramamine, and then the third track, Kimoi Warui. I butchered that pronunciation, I'm sure. Kimoi Warui, or it's a Japanese word, and it's taken from a line of dialogue from an anime production. I'm going to be very brief with the other songs, except for the final track, Space Cadet, which on that one I'll spend a little more time as well. So fasten your seatbelts. This is going to be long, but I do hope it'll be satisfying. And yes, if it appears that I keep glancing at something, I am. I have some very detailed notes that I've prepared for this video. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at them often to help keep me on track. One of the things I've noticed in diving into this record, that many commentators on Will Toledo's music continue to strap this albatross of depression around Will's lyrics. And that's certainly a factor in a great deal of his material, but it's becoming clear to me, at least, that perhaps because he grew up, in Leesburg, Virginia, surrounded by religion and Christian dogma, Will applies a spiritual perspective to the content of his lyrics. And sometimes in doing that, he is injecting, in my opinion, he's injecting some concepts from non-Christian thinkers that may sound like he's discussing depression directly, but I don't think that's the case. You consider the song Better Times to Die on Teens of Style, and it's direct reference to the divine counsel, and he, used this biblical notion of the divine counsel, but he used that metaphorically to apply to his description of his dealings with record company executives. So, I mean, Will's a smart guy, and he knows what he's doing with his lyrics, and he knows what he's doing with his punctuation of his lyrics. There is evidence that I've encountered where Will has said that he has read about Hinduism. And given that, I think it's reasonable to expect, at least in my opinion, that he's also encountered Buddhism in some form or another. So it's not an alien topic to him. So also, one of the songs on this recording makes a very direct reference to the anime franchise Evangelion, which has some very overt Christian symbolism going on, but it also employs a significant Buddhist concept, more than one, in fact, particularly the concept of anatta, or no self. Now, I'm not an expert on Evangelion franchise, and I'm not a Buddhist scholar. But in the latter case, I am a practicing Buddhist, and I've spent considerable time, more than 20 years, studying not just the core texts within the Tipitaka, but I've also written a very obscure book, which is this book here. My Buddha is Pink. Little glare. There we go. My Buddha is Pink. Now, just to be clear, this book is very irreverent. It's a fun read, but despite that, me being fun with the topic, it is solidly based on core Buddhist principles. It's primarily a compilation of posts from a blog that I used to write by the same name, My Buddha is Pink. So anyway, if you're interested, the book is available on Amazon. Now, also I must say that my readings and interpretations of the specific songs that I'm going to be diving into they're my own thoughts, my own observations. In no manner am I asserting that this is exactly what Will is saying or trying to express. I'm using my own personal knowledge and life experience to identify what a song means to me. And I could be completely off base. And how you react and interpret these songs is based on your knowledge and life experience. What all of us need to keep in mind is that how we react is not will. We are not will. And these songs are not about us, nor are they written for us. You know, Bob Dylan eventually stopped talking about his songs altogether because his fans were personalizing his lyrics inappropriately, as if, oh, he's singing to me. I believe I know him as a person. And Dylan was like, no, you don't know me. Stop saying that you do. So how we react and interpret these songs is really based upon our own lived experience in the moment we exist right now. Very Buddhist concept. And that may change. You know, as we grow older, our perspective on things may have been one way in the past, but now it's a different way currently, and it will change again. So here I go. And as I said, I wrote some very, very detailed notes. Now, the recording opens up with the song Ending of Dramamine. And this is a reference to a Modest Mouse song by the name Dramamine. And so I had to go listen to it and, check it out. And again, I was kind of appalled by some of the explanations that people came up with for that song's meaning. I mean, for me, what I've learned is always look for the plain meaning first before opting for a more symbolic meaning or even a more esoteric, meaning. So, for example, Dramamine is a drug that you take to prevent motion sickness while traveling, such as to prevent car sickness, air sickness, seasickness, okay? Now, there are some annotations to the song that suggest, that it can be abused for hallucinogenic purposes. And I think it's pushing the envelope too far to go with that. So knowing that Dramamine is something for motion sickness when you're traveling, the song then is implying there's a journey, but not a literal journey. It's a metaphoric journey about a relationship. And the relationship is negative. One party is sucking all the life and energy out of this relationship. So we get the line, I'd said that I'd tell you, and that's you've killed the better part of me. If you could just milk it for everything. I've said what I've said, and you know what I mean, but I still can't focus on anything. We kiss on the mouth, but still cough down our sleeves. So yeah, this relationship is repellent to both parties. Both, however, are unwilling to walk away from the relationship. And this is not an uncommon experience for, I won't say a lot of people, but it's just not uncommon that we can find ourselves in destructive relationships. We know they're destructive relationships, but we can't walk away from them. So then we've got this other line, look at your face like you're killed in a dream and you think you've figured out everything. All right, there's resentment in this line, really biting, scathing retort here. You think you've figured out everything. All right, it's kind of saying, hey, I know a few things. And that is revealed, in the next line that this person, I know what's going on. I know the lay of the land, because then there's a line, I think I know my geography pretty damn well. All right. So there is this really strong, biting, scathing retort that this person is expressing to the other person. Now, in the use of the word, I know my geography pretty well. Geography fits in with the concept of a trip, like a road trip, and also a map inside your head, in terms of the lay of the land. So if the two people are in the car at the same time is not important. It could be a conversation the person is having inside their head. Or it could be because, on long road trips, when two people are stuck in a car, you got to talk about something eventually. But that isn't really necessary to make plain. All right, we're just talking about the expression that's going on with this. So, because the voice that is singing the song admits his own weakness, his own inability to break off this relationship, despite recognizing that it's really fucked up. So we get the line, you say what you need, so you'll get more. If you could just milk it for everything. Okay? But then that voice capitulates. I've said what I've said, and you know what I mean, but I still can't focus on anything. So he's capitulating. He's saying, I know what's going on here, but, damn it, I can't. I'm still powerless. I feel powerless. So some comments, do focus, and I think inappropriately, on the hallucinogenic qualities of Dramamine. And see the road trip in the music video for this song as a proxy for a psychedelic trip. But this, to me, doesn't jibe with the plain meaning of the song, that it's about two people in a destructive relationship they both hate but can't break away from. Now, in my opinion, the ending of the song, Dramamine, isn't all that dramatic to me as I expected from the lyric in the Car Seat Headrest song, but it is anachronistic. It's not scary. But we get this line in the Car Seat Headrest song that the end scared Degnan, who is a friend of Will's, I presume. All right, so that's the song Dramamine. And the ending of Dramamine, this opens with a very simple rhythm. But a lot of people don't talk about the musical nature of this song. They go right into the lyrics, but the musical nature of this song is it's not what's the word? It's intended. So anyway, it opens with this very simple rhythm, all right, and then we get this organ and synth coming in that does startle in some spots. It comes out really strong and bombastic. There are points where it's like a juggernaut, just. Boom, the sound is very grandiose and operatic, like in an overture. So yeah, a lot of people don't talk about the musical composition of the song, particularly the opening. So when I heard that first blast of synth sounds, it's like blaring like a ship's horn or a freight train. It made me jump. And then shortly afterward, we get this huge crescendo of organ. It's like something from Phantom of the Opera. It's just very grandiose and godlike in terms of its presence, as if you're witnessing this enormous source of power. You know, is he talking about God in sound? You know, is Will trying to create a sound portrait of God? Okay, and I put quotes around it because I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about the concept, the idea. Now, after that, the song becomes very sedate and almost plodding. And Will's voice sounds exhausted. But, you know, it sounds tired, but it isn't tired like he just finished loading bales of hay onto a wagon. It's kind of like he's saying, through this expression of fatigue, why do I need to tell you this? That kind of tired. And so the first verse is about someone else, all right? The drunk. This is an other, okay? Not Will. And we are led to believe that he's run over a friend. But the line in the song is, as his friend falls under the wheels. So he's watching, the drunk is watching this happen, but is he driving or is he watching it happen from the side? Not quite here. Is it a dream? Is it a hallucination? It's all very unclear. And then, you know, at the end of this verse and other verses, he goes, oh yeah, just deadpan. And it's like, yeah, that's how it happened. You can believe me. Oh yeah. Now, after that opening verse, which is about somebody else, the singer becomes self-obsessed. So we get this string of words. Think about myself. I think about myself. Care about myself. I care about myself. So notice, first he says something without the pronoun I. Think about myself. Then he adds I think about myself. All right, and then after doing this, he just jumps directly to saying it with the pronoun. I only care about myself in other fears too stupid to mention. You know, and then the ending of Dramamine scared Degnan. Right, so again, this reference to a song about a fucked up relationship, and that jarring distortion at the end of the song becomes this catalyst for fear. All right, so this song goes on, the ending of Dramamine. The way that you all see me, that's who I am, but not who I need to be. All right, this is a repeated theme of the individual's struggle to become a better person. And this is a common theme that Will employs in many car seat headrest songs. And he goes on with, moving my joke body through the cold November night. That ha-ha is very much like, oh yeah. You know, the way he adds that to an end of a verse. Now, Will has been, I mean, in the, you know, he employs Neil Young songs, hooks, in some of his songs. So we know that Neil Young has had an influence on Will Toledo. And Neil Young had polio as a child, and as he entered his teens and 20s, Neil Young was very hyper aware of his body, how thin and gangly it was because of the polio. And he did what he could to hide that. You know, he would sleep in his clothes because he felt ashamed of his body, his joke body. And, you know, when you watch Will Toledo on stage, he moves very much like Neil Young moves on stage, if you've observed both of them. You know, it's not always very graceful and kind of lurching at times. but you can also see that both of them are lost in the music. All right, so the song goes on, and he's declaring, though, that he doesn't hate himself because of all these things. He tolerates himself, but he does wish he was someone else. But it seems too stupid to mention. Why? Because I know I'll be ripped in heaven. That heavenly, reward for being a good person where everybody's pretty and ripped, okay? Heaven is a bar where the same thing happens over and over again. All right, so now the song musically shifts, and Will's singing actually becomes more melodic, all right, and the rhythm starts to get swanky, And he says, I was young, I was thin, I had money, and I loved you, all right? So these are all things that he ought to be satisfied with, things that he had. I was young, I was thin, I had money, and I loved you. But then came the shabba-da-bop-bop, bishibide, oh yeah. Now, which I just love when he brings that in there. It's just, it makes you kind of want to move. And that's important in my mind, that it makes you want to do that, because some have opined that this is his depression, but it's not an unpleasant feeling that he's describing, at least to me. And he doesn't express it as being unpleasant. You just listen to it. When he pulls out that shabba-da-bop, bishibide, oh yeah, man, it's like, you want to move, okay? I want to sway my hips. I want to dance. It's very easy and light. It's not dark and heavy. It's distracting. But what is it? All right? So Will goes on, I need a name for what I'm feeling. Then I can start to work on a meaning. Speaking of the shabba-dee-bop, bop, bishibide, oh yeah. So he wants to identify it, give it a name, so he can identify it better or understand it better. At least that's what he's thinking. This goes to a Buddhist notion of name in form, that things exist as they are, yet we tend to give them a name. And when we name something, we become more obsessed with the name rather than the true essence of the object being named. All right, a lot of heavy stuff there, but so anyway, that's what he wants to do, because when you name something, you get a little bit of control over it. Harry Potter wasn't afraid to say Voldemort's name because that gave him control over his own feelings about it. But the thing is, he also wants to understand when does this feeling happen? After all, he had all these things that he should be satisfied with. So yeah, it's like an elusive feeling of ennui and restlessness, of dissatisfaction. And in Buddhism, we call it dukkha. So, as I said, Will has talked about Hinduism before, so it's reasonable to believe that he's also read about Buddhism and has been exposed to Buddhism. Now, it's the essence of the cycle of samsara, all right? That life is suffering, that it is unsatisfactory. Even when we achieve goals and get things that we want and desire, we remain dissatisfied. We want more. We're never satisfied with what we have. We always want more. Okay? And that desire for more, being dissatisfied with what we already have, that feeds samsara, that brings on this feeling called dukkha. So on the one hand, the shabba-da-bop-bop, bishibide, oh yeah, is a bit sensual and pleasurable. But on the other hand, it also represents dissatisfaction. And that's why Will wants to name it and understand it. It's a feeling all of us encounter, at different times and different intensities. And it's also a feeling that it's difficult for us to identify. Now, in the next line, next verse, we get, in a crowded room, you will hear your own opinion voiced. So is he describing literally being in a crowded room, such as at a party? I don't think so, based on the next line. You can sit back without a word, watch it spread, or fall silent. Oh yeah. Ken, I just love the way he throws that in there. Just so deadpan. You know, you can sit back without a word, watch it spread, or fall silent. Oh yeah. So this is where I'm going to look a little further beyond than what might the literal meaning. But I'm building this based on everything that's already happened in the song. And that is, I believe Will is describing the process of meditation, specifically insight meditation that is practiced by Buddhists. Now, the goal of meditation is to train the mind to become still, because most of the time our mind is like a crowded room with hundreds of voices going on all at once, and our minds become restless and unable to remain focused. All right, so the goal of meditation is to still the mind rather than engage all these thoughts that are happening. We just sit back and observe them. Okay? You can sit back without a word, watch it spread, or fall silent. Now, the it, is that the shabba-da-ba-ba, bishibba-day, oh yeah? Could be. In the next verse, we have a reference then to the enigmatic and extremely introspective, insensitive author Franz Kafka. The line, if it's too late to speak, I could get out of bed, find a pillow and write, leave it for you to find, if the moment is gone. So now Will himself has annotated this lyric and has said that this is loosely taken from a letter Kafka wrote to Oscar Pollock, who was an art critic and one of Kafka's classmates, in which Kafka writes about his extreme ambivalence over expressing to Pollock some thoughts and perhaps feelings because of how anxious and clumsy he feels about the situation. Words that Kafka says could be articulated much better by somebody else. Now, I've read a lot of Kafka, but I haven't read a lot about Kafka. And just based on his works and what little I have read about him, he's always struck me as a very sexually ambivalent person, all right? I mean, he canceled his engagement with his fiancée twice. So here we are moving through these different sources. We go from Kafka, and now we're going to Pink Floyd. We get a reference to Pink Floyd from The Wall with the line, hey, can you hear me now? Am I alone in my futile efforts? Sometimes I get so mad I can't do the things I usually can, which is sad. Now, and Will has cited The Wall as being a major influence on his songwriting. So we're getting this call out to The Wall here, again expressing this isolation that is going on. And then we see in the next verse, Will using a common writing technique that he frequently employs himself, and that is lines that repeat a single word, but each time the word is used, it has a slightly different connotation. All right? So we get the lines, occupying space. I know I take up space. Will there be a space for my soul in space? That's heaven to me. And then he finishes off that verse with a former post office box address that he had. It's important here to notice the punctuation with these lyrics, because There's a question mark after the phrase, for my soul in space. So what comes after that is a new sentence. He's not saying, is there a place for my soul in space that's heaven to me? No. Is there a place that's for my soul in space? That's heaven to me. Okay, so he's responding to that question, himself about that space. That would be heaven to me. And he uses his physical space, with this address as his physical address, I should say, for that space, but this is metaphorical. The space, again, is in our minds. It's in Buddhism, there is no literal heaven or hell. It's rather we create our own heavens and hells in the here and now, with what we're living and dealing with right now. And that space is in our minds. We live through our own hells. Then we come back to Evangelion, because it's implied in Evangelion, that we create our world. But it's very explicit in Buddhism. And the point is that we can change our minds. And when we change our minds, we change the world around us, because we change the way we interact with the world. And when we change the way we interact with the way the world responds to us changes. So heaven and hell are not destinations. They're just reflections of our current existence. Then comes the closing chorus with the same expression that now I'm young and thin and all that. And then, but the shabba-de-bop, the shibba-de, oh yeah, comes in again. It keeps coming back. And then Will starts inserting these sort of like parenthetical lines. Thanks for fucking with my head. Come again soon. That's what he's saying to the shabba-de-bop. Hey, thanks for fucking with my head again. Come again soon, because, he knows it's going to come back. And then we get this bridge in the song, which is kind of an interesting diversion, but it's still within the parameters of the song that have already been laid out, both musically and lyrically. And we get the line, and in the sky there is a place where it's warm and you're there. And I've got the power now. Yeah, I know what to do to make you feel something besides pain. So he's gaining this insight into his pain and the pain that all of us feels. And that insight rests on this notion that we spend too much time either living in the past, dwelling about what's already happened, things that we cannot change, or we project ourselves into the future, which makes us become anxious and fearful of what might happen. And because of that, the result is we're not living in the here and now, in the moment right now. Because it's out of this moment that our future arises. And if we're not paying attention to what the moment is right now, then we are losing control of what happens next. So we get the next line, because it's the love that we've come to expect, to deserve. It's not that we've come to expect to deserve. There's a comma in there. It's the love that we've come to expect. It's the love we've come to deserve. That's what that comma is meaning. And then we fuck and it's nice. It's not a complicated mess. And my back doesn't hurt. And your head doesn't tell you to kill yourself. So we smile and embrace until we don't know who we are. So, that's the moment that we can be happier when we immerse ourselves into the moment. And it doesn't mean we don't plan for the future or can't plan for the future, but it does mean that what we do right now creates our future. The future is not just this magical thing that happens. We make it out of what we are doing, right now. And then I like that line, so we smile and embrace until we don't know who we are. It does kind of imply this melding, which you also, get in the film Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Hedwig is always trying to find his other half. so that they can meld together and become one. But guess what? The shabby bop the shibby day, oh yeah, comes back. It is relentless. All right? And then he sings, I can't hear a thing now. I guess I belong to me now. I can't hear a thing now. I guess I belong to me now. Okay, so that's the silence of the mind. When we finally take control over the chaotic chatter and nonsense that may be going on inside of our heads, it's silence. And that creates an opportunity for us to focus our attention onto more productive things. Then we get the line, but when night fell on Montana, I found a rest stop completely deserted. But I still felt the eyes upon me, so I drove away. That, for me, again, really encapsulates experiences that you can have as you become more practiced in meditation. There are going to be moments, sometimes really, really brief, where your mind is empty. And rather than just accepting that, it's like, whoa, what just happened? You see, your thoughts are still there. It's like him being in the rest stop, still feeling the eyes upon him. You know, those thoughts are still there. And then your awareness of it, it makes you uncomfortable. And then, you know, the thoughts come back, or in this situation, he drove away. Then the song returns to the original opening beat, that boom, 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 boom. And then we get this backwards taping of thanks for fucking with my head, come again soon. And then we get the intensity growing with the distortion and the noise, with the guitar and some just really scraping, mechanical, malevolent sounds, like in the ending of Dramamine. And it is scary. Oh, yeah. So the next song is called Beast Monster Thing, Love Isn't Love Enough. And I'm not going to dive deeply into this song, but I totally love this song. It's got a very heavy rhythm on the guitar that I just love, followed by this string tapping with the pick and scraping, you know. You know, just, oh man, it's very psychedelic and Beatlesque after he sings the stanzas of Love Isn't Love Enough. The song is dripping with self-pity, but it's just so freaking fun and self-mocking to me. Seriously, the guitar effects on this song are just freaking brilliant. All right, so as you can see, I'm approaching 40 minutes, and I'm now about to dive deeply into the other song I said I would dive into, and that is Kimoi Warui, which again, I'm butchering that pronunciation. And the title is taken from the closing scene in the film The End of Evangelion, which follows the series Neon Genesis Evangelion. And it refers to what Asuka says after Shinji attempts to strangle her, but he stops when she puts her hand up gently to his face. So Kimoi Warui, you know, what does it mean? I did some research on the phrase and how it is used and generally used in Japan. And I'm seeing how it can be used in a Buddhist sense to represent samsara, because Asuka doesn't use the pronoun I, which is watashi or watashi, when she says this. She doesn't say watashi kimochi ware. She just says kimochi ware. And so there is also no clear object or subject when she is saying it. So this suggests that she is not directing this expression of things suck at Shinji. And besides, there's the gesture that implies empathy and compassion for Shinji when she's putting her hand up to his face. The point of Kimochi Warui is expressing this ultimate unsatisfactory nature of the current situation, the unsatisfactoriness of a current situation. And she says it without heat. There's no anger. But also knowing Asuka, it's reasonable to conclude that she's also expressing her own frustration over her own helplessness and fear of connecting with others who always let you down. That's one of her issues. And also in the original series, you know, she falls into this pit of despair because she failed in, I think it was The Last Angel, and Shinji comes in, you know, after he ran away, he comes back and, you know, saves the day. And that just devastates Asuka. So, and also fans, not Finns, are saying Shinji is trying to strangle her, but I disagree, all right? I don't think, in fact, Shinji is touching her neck at all because she's not struggling or showing any movement that would indicate that he had his hands on her neck and he was attempting to strangle her, all right? People who are unconscious, when you start to strangle them, they wake up and they start fighting you to prevent. Asuka doesn't do any of that. She's not trembling. She's not fighting against Shinji, which is why I think he's like holding his hands above her neck. And also just before that, we got Rei. Shinji sees Rei rising or standing above the sea, all right? So when Asuka reaches up and touches Shinji's face, which is it's done very gently, compassionately, he withdraws his hands and then his crying changes. At first, he was crying tears of rage, but then it's like he just surrenders and he begins weeping. And then that's when Asuka says, "This sucks." Meaning, to me, meaning everything, existence, dukkha, all right? She's not talking about how she physically feels. She's referring to existence, the current situation. This sucks. We're still here. I'm still here. All right, so then with that in mind, we have Will singing about the frustratingly unsatisfying nature of existence, beginning with his letdown about Brian Wilson, with the realization that people can just be pathetically self-absorbed and rapacious, as he sings, just like every other human. And like Shinji in the song here, Will is retreating into inaction. He has a loss in faith so severe that he has no faith that death, quote, is to be anything at all, end quote. Now again, we have to pay attention to the words here. He's not saying that he has no faith that death is anything at all. He's saying that he has lost his faith that death is to be anything at all. All right, so that when death happens, he's losing his faith that there's something else beyond death. So he's facing this notion that death is annihilation. Okay? You know, that's where we kind of start getting this, in the song where he repeats the various usages of the phrase Kimochi Warui. I mean, I know I'm really butchering that. And also, similar to Shinji's choice, you know, we all have to decide whether, despite the fact that things suck, that we persevere with a hope that we can diminish our own suffering or the suffering of others. But there's always the other option, and that is to give in to nihilism. So consider the next line. Some of these things are symptoms, and some of these are being human, right? This is ennui, that samsara creates the symptoms of through our feelings of experience, but it's also just part of being human, okay? And if you accept this concept of rebirth, then that means we're going to be going through this over and over and over and over again. That concept can be overwhelming and oppressive, but there is science that kind of backs this up. I mean, a big question currently in science is what happens to anything that gets sucked into a black hole. Some say it's oblivion. But what about the basic laws of the universe as we understand them? Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. They just change form. So that would mean then that not even a black hole can destroy anything. It's just a mechanism for change. You know, and silly as it may sound, I mean, you even got Sheldon Cooper in Big Bang Theory postulating that there are these multiple universes in which a version of himself exists without being aware of any of the other versions. Okay, and others theorize that neither oblivion nor some religiously oriented plane of existence is what awaits us, but rather we are just reborn into parallel universes, parallel existences, not as ourselves, okay? Our self is tied to our existence with a body, and when we lose that body and get a new body, we're a different self. But the karma, this is Buddhism, the karma that we accumulate, that's what goes forward. So, that is why it's important to not fall into the trap of nihilism, because we can gradually improve ourselves, but we have to keep in focus that karma is, you know, there is no permanent self, there's no soul. These are my beliefs and the way I view existence. So that's why I am bringing that into the song. But again, I believe it's a valid explanation given what I know about Will Toledo at least being exposed to Hinduism, which has some similar beliefs, but in my opinion become more refined in Buddhism. So we get the line, and I am torn between trying to be a better man and trying to accept the man I am. This is an enormous conflict for many of us. We all face it at some point, and some of us are very adept at making the decision, you know, of what we're going to do and then moving forward. For others, it's an existential conflict that keeps coming up over and over. And this is why nihilism is such a dangerous trap for us. The people that I've talked to and the books that I've read and the TV shows and movies that I've seen are all I have to turn to learn how to live. But when will I ever learn? You know, this is a basic existential question that, you know, all of us at one point or another and sometimes continuously wrestle with. And just because one may come to the conclusion that it's an unanswerable question, and that is something that Buddhism stresses. It is an unanswerable question. And because it's an unanswerable question, we should stop asking it, because it just feeds samsara. It just feeds our suffering to constantly address this question. But anyway, even though that might be the case, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean that nothing matters. You know, that's the nihilism, because we're going to have to do it over again. So in that sense, I mean, even suicide does not provide you an escape, because you're just going to exist again. It's not oblivion. And in fact, suicide would take you back. It would take you backwards rather than moving forward through each existence, that things do gradually get better, over eons and eons. Or if you have the discipline of the Buddha, you reach the state of nirvana, in which case it does end. So maybe, what we should be doing is we need to continue to attempt to be better people while simultaneously accepting the person that we are. It's not one or the other. It's accepting both. Well, then the next song is I-94 West, 832 miles. It's a short but beautiful, spacey instrumental. Man, I love it. It's really, really good. Next song is You're in Love with Me. And I love this song too. It just really makes you want to move. It's a song of reveling in the knowledge that somebody is in love with you, even if that person is unaware that they are. So the line is, you could be in love with anyone, but you're not in love with anyone because you're in love with me. Now, some commentators have said that line, because you're not in love with anyone, just means that person is not in love with anyone at all, and then he's just projecting, trying to fantasize in his head that that person is in love with him. And I don't get that reading in it at all. He's singing, you could be in love with anyone, but you're not in love with anyone. You're in love with me. I'm not anyone. You're in love with me. See, that's what I get out of it. And then, again, the Neil Young influence, that we could fall in love with anyone if we just allow ourselves. Neil Young's song, You Got Love to Burn. Or even the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. Sometimes we find someone who will be with us for a really, really long time, and sometimes it's just for a few hours. Next song is America, Never Been. It begins a bit melancholic, but it dives into this headspace that, we get kind of like on road trips and all the crazy shit we end up thinking about, while we're driving. The first chorus, we get another Kafka reference. And I've never read America, all right? The book Kafka wrote, the book America, is about a fictitious immigrant to America and what happened to him. And Kafka wrote this without ever going to America, without ever setting foot in North America. Okay, so in the song, Will is saying, yeah, I've read America. The song is also kind of a refutation of what observable America is. That it's not necessarily truly a land of all these ideals, but it's a pathetically conniving, commercialized place. It's a great song. I love it. Next one is, I want you to know that I'm awake. I hope that you're sleeping. And I really dig the acoustic guitar groove in that killer distorted guitar, electric guitar that comes in later, It's just this great rhythm and the strumming. And Will's voice reaches all kinds of expressive levels, even in his laconic drone that is employed throughout most of the song. And I love the interlude and about the middle of the song as a very slint feel as from Spiderland. I really love this song. Despite its darkness, this is a song you can shimmy and shake to, all right? This is a song that it makes my body want to move. And there's also extraordinary storytelling going on in this song. It really needs no further explanation. The next one is another really short, fun song. Is This Dust Really from the Titanic? It's got a simple, very infectious riff. And it's just, the two parts, about the cool and then shitty things about having artists as friends. Really nice. Then there's the last song, which I'm going to talk a little more. This, I'm approaching an hour now on this. God, who watches a video for an hour? But we're up to the closer. Hey, Space Cadet. So after the intro, you get this very nice melodic intro. I really love how the melody begins, and then it begins at this one rhythm. But then when Will comes in with hello, 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 the melody slows down, all right? And it does this a couple of times during the song. I think it's just a really effective technique to go in from certain more animated sections of the song where the rhythm is a little brighter to when our Space Cadet is singing and it just kind of slows and slows. And the refrain really is the key to the entire song. You're gonna need a lot of love, but not the kind you're thinking of. So, this is alluding to the fact that we need real affection and love, the kind that validates us as a human. And sexual love does not do that, okay? And just in terms of sex, touching, holding, all of those activities that are done non-sexually, we need that. And we need a lot of that. But we keep thinking that it might be sexual love. And again, that just leads to the samsara that I was discussing, throughout this video, this dissatisfaction. And that's not to say that sexual love is irrelevant or undesirable, all right? It's certainly desirable, but it's not essential to existing as a happy, loving, and supportive human being, okay? He is a space cadet drifting off into his mind. He's not being present, as in being in the present moment. Hanging out with your friends without actually, being with them. The things you see inside your head, you better make other plans instead. All right, too much living in your head, too much fantasizing, too much projecting. Hey, pay attention to what's going on. Now, I noticed that somebody, there's a line, in there where he mentions the precox feeling. And somebody wrote that because the precox feeling, I guess, was used in some psychiatric diagnosing techniques for schizophrenia. And that the commentator was suggesting that this is the first time that Will ever mentions anything about schizophrenia in his music. And I'm like, I don't think so. This album was released in 2014, and Twin Fantasy, when it was released in 2011, Will mentions schizophrenia. I don't want to be schizophrenic, during the song Beach Life and Death. So to me, it's not the first time he makes a reference of any kind to, and this would be a circuitous reference to schizophrenia, whereas in Twin Fantasy, he's being very direct about it. So, all in all, I've kind of come to realize that this record, this album, How to Leave Town, is right now probably my favorite car seat headrest release. I just really love every song on it. And I really love Nervous Young Man, and I really love Twin Fantasy. And I do really love the compilation for Teens of Style. I need to listen to Monomania and My Back is Killing Me, Baby, and check them out. But for right now, this one, is my number one true favorite. And I've listened to it a lot in preparation for this video, and that would clearly have something to do with it. But I've listened to the others that I've done videos about, on repeat. But this one, I just keep going back to. I just love it. Some of those musical hooks are just so infectious. And the musical techniques that he is employing, in this is just really, really good. Really fine material. Anyway, hey, you think some of my interpretations are off? Hey, share your thoughts about it. Be polite, okay? Be respectful. Or if any other thoughts. And remember that just because I say this is what the song means to me doesn't mean your interpretation is incorrect. All right, your interpretation is valid for you. My interpretation may change over time. Yours may change over time. We may become closer together in terms of how we view the song, or we may end up, diverging. It doesn't matter. Will has succeeded with this release to make emotional and intellectual connections, I think, that a lot of artists just can't do, and not for lack of trying. So, yeah, please share your thoughts in the Down Under. Appreciate your patience in sitting through this. And always remember to pray for the people inside your head, for they won't be there when you're dead.